And welcome to the Fantasy Commish podcast. I'm your host, the Fantasy Commish, and we are in the Fantasy Garage. Welcome to Monday Night Podcast, where we're going to recap everything that happened in Week 2 of the 2021 NFL football season. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. This is my first YouTube video. I'm going to have podcasts every Mondays and every Thursdays. So if you like what you see, please help support. And if you really want to follow me even more, I've been detailed in what I'm posting on Instagram. So if you haven't already followed me on Instagram, make sure you do so. It's the_fantasy_commish. Make sure you follow me there. I do a lot more posting on there on a daily basis, while my YouTube channel is just for Mondays and Thursdays. So for this show, we're going to recap each game. We're going to go through some guys that I told you to target for each game, and let's see how those predictions worked out. This is going to be kind of a machine gun type of podcast. I'm just going to throw numbers, I'm going to throw stats, and we're just going to keep on moving along. I'm going to try to keep this under 40 minutes. So if you have a commute, this is a perfect video to watch in your commute. You don't even have to watch a video. Pop in your headphones and just listen to see if my predictions that I posted on Instagram on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday were correct for Week 2 of the NFL season. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go. First game we're going to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals against your Chicago Bears. I told you to keep an eye on T. Higgins. T. Higgins had 6 catches, 1 touchdown for 16 points. Okay, and the reason for that is I like the routes he was running against this Chicago Bears team. I saw Adam Thielen went off against Chicago in Week 1. Therefore, I knew that the underneath routes and crossing type patterns were going to be there for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I was correct. T. Higgins, 6 catches, 1 touchdown, 16 fantasy points. Book it. Second guy I had was Darrell Mooney, Chicago Bears. He also had 6 catches for 12.6 fantasy points. If you would have gotten the end zone, it would have been a lot better day. However, if you listen to me in season-long fantasy leagues, you would not be rushing to the waiver wire to go pick him up on using a waiver. If you check all the other fantasy guys out there, they're telling you to pick up Mooney on the waiver wire. You wouldn't have had to done that. You would have just picked him up off a free agency if he wasn't already on your squad. Another guy that I liked that stunk, it was a big bozo, was Komet. I thought he was going to have a good game for the Bears. He was nowhere to be seen. He's a bozo. However, he could turn things around now that Justin Fields is underneath that center. Okay, so keep an eye on Cole Komet moving forward in the season. Let's see if he has better chemistry with the rookie in Fields. Next guy I said was going to bust by the name of Joe Mixon, and I was correct. Joe Mixon had 8 points this fantasy week. The reason why I thought that is this is what Mixon does. He tricks his owners thinking that he's the next best thing. Oh, he's a 3-down back. He's going to be great. He'll have a great game and then he'll bust. Have a great game and then he'll bust. So keep an eye on his matchups. It's very important moving forward with Joe Mixon. You're going to start him in your season-long fantasy leagues. Why? You drafted him early. He's a good, number 2 or 3 running back on your team. But in daily football, make sure you're looking at his matchup before you take a chance on Joe Mixon. Game number 2 in which we're going to cover is the Browns versus the Texans. Okay, I said Baker Mayfield was going to have a good game. He had a decent game. He went off for 18 fantasy points. I thought he was going to do better than that. He was a little banged up. The running backs, I thought were going to have a good game here for the Cleveland Browns. However, one went off and one didn't. Chubb went off for 16.8 and Hunt busted for 6.3. Guys, be aware of this with the Browns running back, okay? It's a two-headed monster. However, Stefanski likes to feed whoever is the hotter hand. It's usually going to be Chubb, but there are going to be weeks in here, guys, where you're going to see Hunt control the majority of the carries. Keep that in mind moving forward. I said Ingram was going to be the bozo of the week, and I was right. Ingram busted for a whopping 5 fantasy points. Guys, the reason why I thought that, okay, is because everyone was so high on him on the waiver wire. I mean, I wasn't going to take a chance with him on the waiver wire, but they were also playing the Cleveland Browns. And if I know one thing about the Browns is they're going to score, and Ingram is not going to play on 3rd downs for the Texans. Okay, so keep that in mind moving forward. Ingram, watch the matchups. Game number 3 on the docket was one that I was super excited about, was the Los Angeles Rams against Indianapolis Colts. Why was I excited about it? The Rams offense is amazing to watch, okay? If you really sit down and you know football, the formations they get into, the shifts that they do with Woods, the crossing patterns, the digs, the posts, it's just all written up, and it's an amazing offense. Okay, so they're really amazing to watch. I love watching them week in and week out. Another reason why I love them is because of the Stafford and the Cooper Kupp connection. They have something that's very special, guys, and it's going to be going on for the entire season. Book that. Okay, Woods is kind of an afterthought in Stafford's eyes. Stafford's not really looking for Woods as much as Goff was last year, so I think Kupp is going to continue this tear that he's on until defenses realize that they need to put a shadow nickel on him and follow him around the field. Even when you do that, however, I do not think you're going to stop Kupp. Kupp runs one of the best route runners in the NFL, and he's on such a potent offense where it's very hard to get him in a double team and not have to worry about the other weapons. So, back to fantasy points. Cooper Kupp, one of the biggest studs of this week, 36.8 fantasy points. Woods, 12 fantasy points. That's modest, but if you're in year-long fantasy, you drafted him really early, you expect more than 12 fantasy points. And Matthew Stafford, who could be the MVP of the season of the NFL this year, 18.22 fantasy points. Wasn't a monster day. It wasn't a bad day. It was just a good fantasy day overall for Stafford. On the Colts, I gave you a very important thing to watch, and that was the Colts wide receiver, who was going to come out of Indianapolis as that number 1 guy for Carson Wentz, and we figured that out. His name is Michael Pittman, USC grad. Okay, he went off for 20.3 fantasy points. He had 8 catches for 123 yards and no touchdowns. Could you imagine if he scored? Okay, keep an eye on Pittman moving forward. If he's not picked up in your league, he's going to be waiver wire number 1. After the waiver wire, if you're in any league with any good players, he's definitely already been picked up. I drafted him in a lot of my leagues pretty early because I saw this upside in him. The Colts needed somebody to throw the ball, and I thought it was going to be Pittman, and I so far I thought right. That could change. Pascal also caught 5 balls for 14.8 fantasy points. Okay, so again, going into week 3, I have both Pascal and Pittman. Okay, I'm probably starting Pittman this week, but I'm keeping Pascal just in case. Okay, we know we've been tricked before if you played fantasy. One big blow-up week does not make a player. Okay, it's got to be consistent. Fantasy football is all about consistency. And right now I'm consistent in 2 leagues, not so much in 1 league. But I'm trying to turn that around by trying to eat up the waiver wire, check the waiver wire, trying to move up the ladder of the waiver wire. So if somebody goes down later on the season, I can have waiver wire number 1 and pick him up. I said that Hines was going to have a good game here. I just thought that the Colts were going to be playing a lot of catch-up, so I thought Hines was going to be down for the passing formations for the Indianapolis Colts, and I was the bozo here. He busted, and he only gave 3 fantasy points. That's commission's bad. Next game, Bills, Dolphins. Okay, Cole Beasley, this is a bad game for me overall. I couldn't get a good read on this game. I didn't know if the Dolphins' defense was any good, and I wasn't sure if the Bills were going to pick it up after that week 1 dud, but Bills picked it up, and the Dolphins' defense is not very good. I said Beasley was going to have a game. He's a bozo, 7 points. I said Fuller was going to have a good game. He's a bozo. He didn't even play. And then I said Singletary. Watch Singletary. He could bust here. He actually went off. He had 17 fantasy points, but I do want to mention, if you are a Singletary owner, hold your horses for a second. Okay, Zach Moss came back this week and he had 2 touchdowns. He's a red zone vulture. Okay, so if you're banking on Singletary to give you 20 points a week, settle down because it's not going to happen. Okay, Moss is going to vulture these goal lines. Now Singletary can make up those points by his receptions, but settle down, hold your horses, take your foot off the gas. Okay, Moss is there for goal line work. Careful. Next game was the game that I knew was going to be a brutal game between the Jets and the Patriots. Bill Belichick simply does not lose to rookie quarterbacks, and he really confused Wilson this game. The kid did not know where to look, where to throw. He was seeing, if I could say, ghosts, just like Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts. Pat's defense, I said it. I said they were going to go off, and they did. Almost 20 fantasy points, 19.72. Bet with Belichick against any rookie quarterback. Book that. I said Jacoby Myers was going to have a good game. I was off. I didn't really put into account that the Jets were going to get blown out here. I should have thought that moving before I made my predictions, and I didn't. That's my bad. He still put up almost 8 fantasy points. Mac Jones is another guy that I said keep your eye on. However, again, I'm a bozo, and I didn't think that the Jets were going to get blown out that bad, so I thought Mac Jones would have some passing opportunities, and he just didn't. So he didn't do much. And last, I said be careful of the shady wide receivers in New York on the Jets. They have a ton of guys that they are all basically the same player, right? Crowder, Davis, Elijah Moore. They're all the same type of runner, right? Receiver. They all want to run the same type of routes. They should have kept the Robbie Anderson to blow the top off the safeties, right? To blow the top off the defense, occupy the safeties. So then the Elijah Moores and the Davises and you know Crawfords or can go all Crowders. Can all run the underneath routes. However, Jets management stinks. Jets. Just end the season. Sorry to my Jets fans out there and my buddies that are Jets fans, but we're not doing much better. 49ers and the Eagles is my next game that I'm going to talk about. I said Hurts was going to have a good game. So did everybody else in the entire universe, and he sure did. He had 21 fantasy points. He didn't throw the ball particularly well. He only completed 12 out of 23 passes for 198 yards, but that's not what you're really keying in on if you're a Hurts owner or even a daily fantasy Hurts owner. You want those rushing yards. He had 82 rushing yards and a score. Okay, I wanted us to keep an eye on the 49ers wide receivers. Okay, was it going to be Deebo Samuels this week or was it going to be Brendan Ayuk? Deebo Samuels, again, solidified in that offense that he is the number one receiver. He went off for 16 fantasy points. He had 8 targets and 6 receptions. Brendan Ayuk, bozo. Okay, Brendan Ayuk had 1.6 fantasy points. Okay, I don't know how he's going to turn it around. I guess if teams start double teaming Deebo and leaving Brandon Ayuk open, it could turn around. Was his rookie season a fluke? I don't know. He's a good receiver. I just don't know what's going on with him. Okay, let's keep an eye on that in week 3, however. Look at targets. Next guy I said be careful was a number 1 waiver wire pickup last week. Elijah Mitchell. Okay, I said be careful with him. And I was right. He's banged up already. He only had 7.3 fantasy points. Okay? I told you to take a wait-and-see approach with him. If you picked him up on the waiver wire, that's great. Right? It was a good pickup. However, you wanted him to sit your bench this first week because you just you didn't know what to expect out of a rookie running back in the spotlight with all this hype moving into this week 2, I repeat, week 2 of fantasy football in the NFL season. So I told you to take a wait-and-see approach. That would have worked in your favor if you had him in year-long leagues. Now he's hurt for a very long time, I believe. I haven't checked, as I've just been doing this research all day. Didn't get a chance to check the injuries besides Deontay Johnson, which I'll get to in a second. The next question is where's Kittle? Where was Kittle at? Right, if you took Kittle, you took him what? Late second, early third round? Something like that. He was abysmal. He was not to be seen. Now, is it the play calling? Is it the quarterback? He's not checking down? What's going on? Right? Is Deebo stealing now his targets? Let's keep an eye on that moving forward. He could be a guy that you could buy low right now. Okay, trade somebody that's a decent player for a Kittle that could explode in the next couple weeks. Remember that, buy low Kittle. Okay, next game is the next game is the Steelers versus the Raiders. Okay, I thought the Steelers were going to come out and blow the tires off the Raiders. I was mistaken. However, I did say watch Najee Harris this week. He had a good game. Okay, didn't explode. He did put up almost 20 fantasy points, but that's just because he caught 5 passes and caught a receiving touchdown. Okay, he only rushed for 38 yards. Okay, that's not good. The offensive line in Pittsburgh is abysmal. However, if Najee stays involved in the passing offense, we still have a chance here to get a second, third round value. I'm a bozo. I took him in the first round in the league. I trust him. We'll see. He could turn it around. Volume. Okay. I thought Waller was going to have a good game. Who didn't? Waller has a good game every game. He only had 11.5 fantasy points. Again, in the tight end position, it's not bad, but where you drafted Waller, it's not good. And last but not least, one of my favorite players who's always constantly hurt, Deontay Johnson. Okay, Deontay Johnson is a target machine. He had 12 targets. He caught 9 of them for 105 yards. That's 19.5 fantasy points. He got hurt on a meaningless play at the end of the game. However, it just came out today. It is a minor injury, and he'll be okay. Whew. I'm telling you right now, guys, I was sweating, couldn't sleep last night. I have Deontay Johnson in all 3 of my leagues. Very high stock in Deontay Johnson, and I'm starting to regret it because the guy's always hurt and he's down. He's crawling, army crawling out. Guy's an unbelievable athlete, unbelievable receiver. Now that he's catching the ball this year, he's even better. He's got to stay healthy. Next game is the Saints and the Panthers. I was all in on the Panthers this game. I loved the Panthers this game. However, I picked the wrong receiver. I thought Robbie Anderson was going to be number 1 in Carolina this week. I was mistaken. He's a bozo. This week, he had 6.8 fantasy points. I was correct, however, in saying that Jameis Winston was going to bust. Okay, Jameis Winston is eating too many W's, okay, on a nightly basis to know that he was consistent in week 1. He only threw the ball 20 times in week 1. Okay, threw for under, I think, 180 yards. I think even 150 yards. He had 5 touchdowns. That's it. Okay? He did not throw the ball much in week 1. He got lucky with the touchdowns. Here we saw flustered Jameis, and I'm a Florida State guy, and it hurts me, but Jameis gets flustered and he just pops the ball up in the air and he gets picked off. Okay, Jameis Winston had 10.34 fantasy points. Not a total disaster, but in the quarterback position, 10 points is not what you're looking for. Jaguars versus Denver Broncos. Chark, you're killing me, bro. Chark, you're killing me. Okay, I had Pittman on my bench. I had Moore on my bench. I had a bunch of receivers on my bench that scored over 15 points. And you're sitting there in my starting flex position giving me 2 points. It can't happen next week. Okay? Trevor Lawrence, hit up your bro. Let's go. Get the passing game going. You got to win a couple games here. Okay? Chark could have a bounce back this week, but we'll learn more about that on Thursday. I said Denver Broncos running backs. I said be careful with them because I thought they were really going to split carries here in week 2, and that was absolutely the case. Both of them got exactly the same amount of carries, and that's Melvin Gordon I'm talking about and Javonte Williams. They both got 13 carries, and they both scored 8.9 and 8.4 fantasy points. Okay, Denver running back by committee right now is trouble. Okay, we either need an injury or we need Gordon to start showing his age and slowing down so Javonte Williams can take over that starting gig for Denver. I thought another thing to look at, I thought in Denver, the number 1 wide receiver after Jared Jeudy went down was going to be Tim Patrick. He had a good game. He scored a touchdown. He had 12 fantasy points. But he wasn't the number 1 receiver in Denver. It turns out that Sutton may be the guy to own in Denver. Now, I'm not dropping Tim Patrick. I'm not. I'm going to keep him on my team. He's going to sit my bench because I'm going to put Pittman in this week. But I'm going to hold him. Okay, you never know. Again, don't be fooled by 1 week of fantasy football. Okay, keep your eyes on target share. Okay, for teams that you're looking to see who emerges as their number 1 targets. Next game is the Vikings versus the Cardinals. This was a great game in terms of fantasy points. I said Dalvin Cook was going to have a bounce back game. So did the rest of the universe, and he did. He had 16.8 fantasy points. Chase Edmonds, I thought was going to have a decent game. I'm not a big Chase Edmonds guy. He's a receiver. He's not a running back, but he went off for 12.5 fantasy points, which isn't terrible. But again, keep an eye on Edmonds and matchup. Okay, look for teams where Arizona they can score with anybody, right? So they don't want to slow it down now that Kyler Murray's playing lights out. They're going to keep the ball in Kyler Murray's hands, thus limiting Edmonds' carries. Hopkins went bozo mode on me. Hopkins is one of my favorite players. This week he went bozo mode on me. I thought he was going to have a much better game than he did, but he didn't. Okay. Justin Jefferson, however, was a guy that I said was going to bounce back, and he did. Okay, he's the number 1 guy there. Thielen is a good little number 2 there in Minnesota, and I think those two can kind of fluctuate weeks who scores the most points. However, Jefferson's got the most upside in terms of pure talent and end zone appeal and the deep ball and all that. So Jefferson has a higher ceiling, but I think Thielen's got that higher floor moving forward in this season. Tampa Bay in Atlanta. Oh boy. Atlanta was in there for a little while and then it got ugly with those 2 turnovers. I said that Pitts was going to have a good game, and he did. Didn't explode, but he had an okay game for week 2 for a rookie. He had 12.3 fantasy points. Calvin Ridley, I was hoping would bounce back, and he did. 19.3 fantasy points. I said Evans was going to be the number one receiver and scoring receiver in Tampa Bay this week, and I was correct. Evans had 24.5 fantasy points. He scored 2 touchdowns. That's what Evans is going to give you. He's going to give you those red zone looks. If Gronk's not getting it, Evans is going to get it. Okay, so keep an eye on that moving forward. Evans, good red zone target for Tom Brady, as we know. And I also obviously said Godwin was going to have a good game, and he had 16.2 fantasy points. Okay, can't go wrong with the receivers in Tampa Bay if you have Godwin or Evans. Evans could have a couple of games. I think Godwin is the guy to own in Tampa Bay in season-long fantasy leagues. He just gets the most targets, and he makes the most out of those targets. However, this week, actually, I must stand corrected. Evans had 9 targets, while Godwin only had 5. So, again, keep an eye on this. Targets. Where's Brady going? Brady spreads it out, though, so if you own one of them, that's fine. Start them. And if you have a daily fantasy league that you play in, like a DraftKings or something, look at matchups. Okay. Next up on the list is the Dallas Cowboys versus the Los Angeles Chargers. I thought Zeke was going to bounce back, and he did. 17 fantasy points. But Pollard, it's a thorn in everybody's side if you own Zeke in year-long fantasy leagues. This is an issue, okay, if you own Zeke. I own Zeke in one of my leagues. This is bad, okay? Because guess what? Everyone's jumping to the waiver wire to get Pollard, but are you going to start Pollard if he's getting 35, 40, not even, 35, 30% of the snaps? No. So Pollard's doing nothing in terms of fantasy but just being a thorn in the side of Ezekiel Elliott owners, okay? So if Zeke goes down, Pollard, it becomes a major, major fantasy running back. But until then, no, if you're picking up Pollard, I don't suggest starting him. He's not getting enough volume, right? But all he's doing is taking away the 3 downs from Zeke. So Zeke owners, you're the ones that you got to be upset about Pollard. Herbert, I thought Herbert and Keenan Allen were going to have a good connection this game. Herbert had almost 20 fantasy points. Keenan Allen had almost 15 fantasy points. Not a terrible day from Keenan. I expected more. He had 104 receiving yards, which is excellent, but he didn't get in the end zone. My sleeper in this game was Jared Cook, and I was this close from being correct. Okay, some horrendous whistles in this game. Absolutely horrendous whistles in this game. One of them being the Cook touchdown. They said illegal formation. I didn't see it, but they called illegal formation, which pulled Cook's touchdown out of the end zone and back to the line of scrimmage. All right, moving on. I also said watch your Cowboys receivers. Watch your Cowboys receivers. CeeDee Lamb ended up being the Cowboys' number 1 receiver with 17 fantasy points, while Amari Cooper got hurt and disappeared. Keep an eye on that moving forward. Is CeeDee Lamb the number 1, or is Amari Cooper the number 1? I apologize if the video is a little bit different. My camera that I was filming on just died on me, and I want to make sure I get this out to you guys before tomorrow. So I promised you all that this podcast was going to be out, and it's going to be out. So I'm filming from my phone for this last game, and this last game is Seattle versus Tennessee. King Henry's the man, okay? He didn't look too good in the beginning of that game, but man, did he turn it on in the second half. 3 touchdowns, 47 fantasy points, baby. Man, he went off. Julio Jones, I said was going to have a bounce-back game, and I was absolutely correct. I just don't think he likes getting called out, and that's exactly what happened there from his coach. He has 128 yards for 18 fantasy points. I thought DK Metcalf was going to have a comeback game. I'm wrong. I think Lockett's the guy there in Seattle. DK looks good. Lockett gets open. Remember that. And Russell Wilson is going to Russell Wilson. Okay, he went off for 26 fantasy points in that game. Last but not least, the Baltimore versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I really had nothing to post on this game. I just said sit back, relax, and enjoy it. The one thing I did want you to do is look at the Ravens running back. How does that shake up? Tyson Williams led the backfield with 13 carries. Latavius Murray with 9, and then Freeman with 2. And Tyson Williams scored 11 points. This is a backfield to avoid moving forward. We don't know who's going to have the good game, from week in and week out. So I suggest avoiding this altogether. If you have a Tyson Williams or Latavius Murray, keep him on your bench and pray that the other guy gets injured. Never want to see somebody get injured, obviously, but for fantasy purposes, that's what you're going to be looking for. I thank you all for being here on this Monday night / Tuesday morning if you're watching this on Tuesday. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please remember to hit that subscribe button and look out for my next video on Thursday where we're going to get into some predictions for week 3 of the NFL season. Okay, I nailed a lot of these predictions here, guys, in week 2. Okay, so I'm looking forward to doing it again for week 3 to help you guys dominate your fantasy football leagues. Subscribe. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, _fantasy_commish. And I will see you all on Thursday. And if you're following me on Instagram, I'll be posting all day tomorrow.